was no denying that after yet another season where Eagles cornerbacks were battered, bruised and burned every single week, that they needed a monumental secondary upgrade. It also didn't help that it felt like every team in the division now has a substantial weapon at wide receiver. Dallas have not only got CeeDee Lamb, but Amari Cooper has proven more than a handful for Eagles corners in the past, and Terry McLaurin flat out abused that secondary during his rookie season. While the Giants are still the Giants, I mean, hey, Darius Slayton's coming along nicely, and obviously Golden Tate still exists. So the Eagles needed to do something, and what they did was go out and find arguably one of the top man coverage cornerbacks in the NFL. Someone who can shadow a wide receiver one, match him up all game long, and really take away half of the field. But can he do that against the best receivers the NFC East has to offer? Well, in 2019, Slay matched up against both Terry McLaurin and Amari Cooper, so I wanted to dive into the tape to find out just how much better or worse Darius Slay was in comparison to the Eagles cornerbacks defending those receivers who may well be facing him for years to come. Before we get started though, guys, as always, a massive thank you for taking time out of your day to watch this content. If you do enjoy it, leaving a like really does help this channel, as does hitting that big red subscribe button if you want to see more. But most importantly, let us know what you think down in the comments below, and don't forget to get your daily dose of Philadelphia sports coverage from myself and all of our writers over at phillysportsnetwork.com. Alright, before we get into the tape, we have to first understand how hard it really is for the Eagles to currently defend Amari Cooper and Terry McLaurin. Now, Amari Cooper obviously traded to the Cowboys in 2018. He did not take long to scold this secondary. He had 217 yards and 3 touchdowns in his first game against the team. 1 year later though, he started off with a bang, getting a 106-yard game, catching all 5 balls thrown his way, but kept out of the end zone. And I don't know what happened the last time they played each other, but he caught 4 passes out of 12 for no touchdowns and 24 yards. But the overwhelming consensus is Amari Cooper is a very, very good receiver. And if you don't agree, I'm sure you agree that CeeDee Lamb could absolutely be one day. As for Terry McLaurin, he has had 2 games against the Eagles, each of them containing 1 touchdown and over 120 receiving yards. He's caught every pass thrown his way except 2, including all 5 in the team's final matchup. So it's tough. Like, these guys are no slouches. The Eagles secondary has struggled against them, but could Darius Slay do any better? I want to start off with the Dallas Cowboys, because although he was matched up predominantly against Amari Cooper, he also faced Tavon Austin and a little dose of Michael Gallup. Now, his numbers in those games weren't actually that bad. Amari Cooper had 31 yards, which I think we can all agree is far better than the 217 he had in 2018 against the Eagles. 2 pass breakups, 3 incompletions and 2 completed passes. So not a bad day at the office there. Now, the first thing I noticed on tape was the difference in scheme, obviously. The Eagles play a lot of cover 3. They like to play bend but don't break, play cornerbacks 10 yards off the ball and just allow them to keep the plate ahead of them because maybe they don't trust their abilities downfield. Darius Slay is constantly on the toes of the wide receiver, and he has the speed to go stride for stride with most of them. And when you've got someone that is as productive around the catch point as Darius Slay, you're naturally not going to throw that way anyway. So it's little to no surprise then that Amari Cooper only had 7 targets in that matchup. And again, for Darius Slay to then get 2 pass breakups and hold him to 31 yards, forcing another 3 incomplete passes, that's pretty good going. Now, let's get into some of these plays. This is a curl route against Amari Cooper. It was actually his first target of the game. It's a cover 1. He's in man-to-man coverage, and he just sticks to Cooper like glue, gets over the catch point, and punches that ball clear. But what I wanted to draw attention to was the footwork here, because this is what separates Darius Slay from everyone else. Now, Cooper here, you can see that front leg is angled inside. What he wants here is Darius Slay to open his hips up, allowing Cooper to glide past. But what Slay does, unlike many other corners who would just flat out open their hips and allow Cooper through, is he subtly moves his outside leg. Now watch very, very closely Darius Slay's outside leg, because he's going to take a couple steps to adjust and go stride for stride with Cooper early on in this route. This is super subtle, but it enables him to stay in the hip pocket. We know he's got the speed to go deep, so he wants to stay as tight as he can to Cooper and force him towards the sideline. Then he turns and looks for the receiver and just stays in that hip pocket. It's a great play. His second target was on the other side of the field, again against Cooper, and again it's a comeback where the exact same fate was met. The difference is here though that Cooper really tries to sell that outside step. Slay again has absolutely no none of this, because if he opens one way, he'll get absolutely toasted the other. So he uses his arms to stay in phase here, stay with the receiver, and is able to battle his way back through, again, making a play at the catch point. It's impressive stuff. What's interesting here is that he faced a similar play against Michael Gallup, but he's playing off coverage. This is what we saw with the Eagles, where you have to click and close down onto the ball. Slay does a good job. There's maybe half a yard gain there instead, gets the player out of bounds, but that's something we're used to seeing instead of seeing players actually defend those routes in press. So I wonder if that will carry over into Philadelphia. Overall, there were just plenty of plays like this where Slay would carry a receiver down the field so well and so tightly that there was no way Dak Prescott would even bother trying to target his way for the fear of an interception. But in zone coverage, Slay isn't quite as prolific, and there are some rusty moments. Like there's this one down in the red zone where he's going to play that curl and flat responsibility. Dak Prescott's actually going to scramble outside, and this is where Slay's instincts come into play, because right here, Prescott should be slinging this straight at the wide receiver. That's a touchdown. Slay is a step behind. Instead, he doesn't. Slay recovers, the play goes on, and it ends up not being a touchdown. And the only other complaint I've got from that game, I've shown this play before, but Darius Slay's tackling is a legitimate concern, and it's one we have to address, because if Jim Schwartz will not adapt this scheme dramatically and play Slay, where he is literally on one receiver the whole time, this is going to be exposed, because he's going to have to come down and make plays underneath. He's going to have to try and tackle and clean up, and unless this gets worked on, the effort isn't good enough. I don't know what the reasoning is for this, but it was all season long, and it's just not great. But all that matters to me, though, is that, of course, Darius Slay held down Amari Cooper, put the clamps on him, and forced him to go below 40 yards. 31 yards, 2 pass breakups, just 2 completions when thrown his way. But what about Terry McLaurin and the Washington Redskins? Now, on the surface, McLaurin was held to 71 yards, which is obviously a big spike, 3 pass breakups, 4 completed passes, and 3 fell incomplete. So 3 forced incomplete, 3 standard incomplete. It's not a bad day at the office. He kept him out of the end zone, but I think these are contextual, because I charted every single throw, and on 3 of them he got burned, and 2 of them should have been touchdowns. So this could have been a very bad day at the office, but why and where did it all go wrong? I think it just starts with the fact that McLaurin is a violent route runner. Like, every movement he makes is so sudden, and it probably caught Slay off guard a little bit. He's lined up in press coverage down here, and McLaurin is going to sell this vertical route so well. Slay does everything right. He stays with him. He's able to use his hands to leverage through the route, but he's so slippery, Terry McLaurin. This was one of the plays that should have been a touchdown, and this pretty much was until McLaurin dropped it. He's just going to run a simple drag route, but McLaurin's smart, intuitive, is going to force Slay to run through his own traffic of linebackers, and as a result, he gets lost in the shuffle. There's a lot of movement here. The backers don't come down or stay up, meaning McLaurin can just manipulate a path through. The ball goes through his fingers. Slay, again, isn't exactly slow off the line, but McLaurin has just got some incredible burst to his game, is able to get underneath Slay, stay there and make a catch. It's just really hard. I think he's one of those rare receivers where you kind of have to play a little bit off coverage and be a bit more conservative, because if you want to get aggressive, you do run the risk of being absolutely embarrassed no matter who you are. Or schematically put into rub routes like we see here, where Slay can't catch him because McLaurin's so deadly fast, and that should have been another touchdown. It wasn't a pretty day at the office against the Redskins, but somehow, some way, Haskins wasn't on his day. He overthrew a lot. McLaurin wasn't on his day. He had a couple of near misses, and he ended up going for just 71 yards. But before we get to the end of this video, I did just want to take into account all of the routes that Slay defended within the context of those 2 games and the yardage he gave up, because there are some interesting things to note. You'll notice that he didn't give up over 40 yards on any particular route over the course of 2 games, which is a pretty good sign. On comebacks, he gave up 1 completion, but on curls, he gave up 2 out of 4 for 20 yards. He's kind of good at nullifying those downhill plays where he's got to break on the ball. In-breaking routes and slants are definitely the weakness. We saw him lined up in the slot a few times. I don't think we'll be seeing that with Roby Coleman and Crayvon LeBlanc in Philadelphia. And out routes did seem to be the weakness. But it's interesting just to put all of those routes together, all of those incompletions, all of the completions, and see where he's really looking good. Like, if you look at a corner route where you're essentially going to ask Slay to run with a receiver on an in-breaking route over the middle and use that speed, go with him, open his hips early on to make sure he doesn't burst ahead of you. He didn't allow a completion. That's really impressive to me. So do the Eagles have a secret recipe to stop the NFC Beast wide receivers? I really don't know. I mean, there was a lot to like in the Dallas game. There was a lot to unfortunately dislike in the Washington one. But I think the fact that he didn't give up 100 yards to either of those wide receivers definitely speaks volumes. It's also interesting to note that with CD Lamb in the picture in Dallas, it's probably going to come down to Sidney Jones or Avonte Maddox trying to put clamps on Amari Cooper. And realistically, who didn't surrender a massive chunk of yardage to Terry McLaurin anyway? It's not like Darius Slay has been humiliated and he's the only corner to do it here. I feel like everyone was victimized by a breakout star in Washington. So what do you think? Does this make you a little bit more confident about the Darius Slay signing, or add some more context as to exactly what we can expect and how he's going to shut down one side of the field? Let me know in the comments, guys. From myself, Liam Jenkins, I hope you enjoyed this content. I'll see you again soon.